One. What's up, guys? It's Wacko. Welcome you to EDC Temporal Season 13 PRs. I'm joined with two people today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? This is Jode, or as some people call me, Joed, playing in EDC for my first time, and looking forward to doing these PRs.
Hi, my name is Wheat, or I also go by Wheaton. Yeah, I've been EDC for way too long, and looking forward to cooking your teams as well as my own. Trust me. So,
I think you're the most harsh on your own team. But as you'll see in PRs, we didn't go too hard on it, maybe. So starting things off, at number 16, we have CB Hulk's team. I don't remember any of the team names. I could have maybe put them there, but if I put the team names, then I wouldn't have been able to place the person to them. So, yeah. We got the Gouging Fire, Gliscor, Slow King, Terra Thundress, Florges, Lilligant, Hisui, Terra, Muckalola, Zora, Hisui, and Bisharp. Do you guys want to say any opening for it?
I can start off with this one. This team, a big upside of it is it's very bulky. It's one of the bulkier teams, maybe top 3 or 4, and I really appreciate the Gliscor and Slowking and Florges actually have ways to heal themselves. It's not just bulky mons that get chipped down and can never heal back. So that's a really nice plus of this team, and it could be hard to break for some teams depending if you don't have the right type coverage for that defensive core. Where it struggles a bit is that it doesn't have a ton of immediate offensive power. Of course, Gouging Fire, Lilligant, Hisui, they can set up on you, and they can be pretty threatening, although Lilligant can be a little risky with Hustle. But they're not always the best if they haven't set up yet, and that was something that dragged us down a little bit for me. You'll see later on, there's some teams that have 3 or 4 mons that are just immediate threats to take a kill, and this is one where you don't see that as much. I'll leave the rest of you guys if you want to make any more comments.
Yeah, so I don't know. My first thought was this team. I guess it's just the Lilligant and the Gouging Fire, but it almost wants to be like a Sun team. Even Sun kind of benefits Thunders. Even maybe Florges. I don't know if Florges gets Weather Ball, but Thunders gets Weather Ball, and Weather Ball would be pretty cool coverage on Thunders. So having a Ninetales or a Torkoal instead of Zoroark might have benefited this team a little bit offensively. And the other thing I don't think you mentioned was I think speed tiers are kind of wacky. I guess you have some okay Scarf potential with Zoroark, and then you have DD with Gouge, but overall I think this is the slowest Topmon, being Thundy. I could be wrong.
I believe there might be a one. I think there's a 110 top. It's one of the slowest for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me saying just a couple things, I think the Terra Captains are very decent. They definitely allow themselves to changing types, allow them to set up and maybe run a game. I do think this team has very strong physical sweepers. I just think it's slow, lacks a fairy resist, has literally no removal. If I'm not, yeah, I mean Lilligant isn't removal, and I think sometimes it can be reliant on its Terra Captains offensively to get much done. I feel like you might need a Scarf Lilligant to physically break. You might need a Specs or a offensive Thunderous to set up and really crunch into some teams. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think that lack of a fairy resist is really unfortunate because you have a poison and a steel type. It's not like you forgot to get your typings, but both of them are also dark types. So you literally have no fairy resist, and you don't really have great ways of beating fairies because and I think the Gouging Fire and the Lilligant would appreciate that as dragon and fighting types. Obviously, Gouging isn't actually weak, but it makes your dragon clicks a little bit worse.
It doesn't having to set up on Specs Moonblast, which is very free against this.
Yeah. But I do think the bigger issue is probably the lack of defog. Obviously, if this was Nat Dex, then you got Thundurus and Gliscor and you're chilling. But
and Florges, yeah,
and Florges, yeah. So you really got screwed by the Nat Dex move cuts. But or the Paldex move cuts. But yeah, gouging fire, I think sometimes wants to run an item, even like a resist berry, and being forced into boots on that, it can hinder your setup potential a little bit. So there's some of the things that I think brought this team down. Certainly got some big setup potential. Could sweep you with the gouge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can move on to the next team. We got
Cool.
Elekid with the Meowscarada, Cinderace, Landorus, Therian, Rotom Wash, Corviknight, Terra Dirge, Vikavolt, Muck, Terra Porygon Z, and like a 4-point Iron Thorns, which is insane. I think this team's all right. A lot of the mons got kind of cucked by Paldea decks being a thing, like Rotom Wash lost a lot of tools, Landorus, Therian lost a lot of tools. Did Lando lose knockoff?
It lost everything.
Yes, they got
It
completely
lost
butchered.
knockoff, defog, toxic, and I want to say it lost explosion too.
That sounds
no,
right.
I think it lost polish too.
Oh, it lost polish. Maybe it kept explosion, but yeah, lost a lot.
I'm also seeing that the speed tiers are like really bad.
Yeah, there's definitely a jump in the speed tiers. I think I want to talk about some of the things it does well. I think this team definitely has the best pivots. I mean, in terms of fast pivots, you have things like Scarf Lando, Scarf Rotom, as well as just probably the two best pivots in the game being Meowscarada and Cinderace with the Protein and the Libero respectively. You have slow pivots like Corviknight and Vikavolt. And I think that's really good to like get in some of these stronger hitting mons like your Terra Porygon Z if you're going to bring that. We'll get to that later. I think in terms of what this team struggles with, you don't have a rock resist. There's not a single rock resist on this whole team. I'm not a big fan of non-Terra Iron Thorns. I think for 4 points it is a steal, but I do think it struggles to be useful unless you get like a really good like one-on-one matchup. I think the special breakers are a little underwhelming. Vikavolt and Porygon Z really sometimes struggle to get that job done. And I think Dirge will probably be forced to Terra most weeks, and Porygon Z might not be able to. That's kind of my harps on the team.
I don't think Porygon Z is like the worst thing in the world without Terra. Like, it's still a functional mon, it's just a lot better with Terra. And yeah, you are probably going to use Terra Dirge every week.
Something I found with this was like the Meowscarada and Cinderace, they're both good and they work well on the team, but I'm not sure you really need both. They fit similar roles, and I know Meowscarada is obviously a hazard setter as well, where Cinderace is a little bit higher on the damage output. But I found that when you get these guys that are like decently strong, fast, physical attackers with U-turn, they end up being checked by a lot of the same things, and it makes your team easier to prep for. I've drafted a team kind of similar to this recently, and it did really badly, which is something that maybe biased me a little bit to move this down. But I do find that like some, your two top tiers have similar checks, and then your lower tiers struggle to answer those checks, in my opinion. So, that's something I felt here.
I also like how the fairy type is clicking player off with Meowscarada. That's gotta be...
Yeah. Yeah.
Fairy Dirge is a thing, though, so...
Yeah, I do think Fairy Dirge. Yeah, that's very similar to another team coming up where we think it's going to be forced to Terra Fairy in order to switch into some things.
And I believe that's going to be the next team. Are you guys ready to go on to the next team?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Right. Well, speaking of forced Terra Fairy, we got Lemon's team. We got the Terra Greninja, Terra Raging Bolt, Landorus, Scizor, Tentacruel, Infernape, Mesprit, Thwackey, Rotom, Quillfish, Histui, and Glastrier. And yeah, as we said, Raging Bolt is pretty much going to be Terra Fairy every week. And for whatever reason, he decided to Terra Gren. But I only feel like Gren's useful if you're going to do like Battle Bond with it. Because otherwise, if you Terra Gren with Protein, like you're just, like Protein is no longer an ability.
Yeah. I do think, Terra Gren does make it more effective for you to get off the Battle Bond. It is kind of lacking, especially for how many points it's worth, compared to something like Raging Bolt, which is completely worth its Terra value. The thing I think this team does the best is I think it has the best priority in the entire division. It has War Shuriken on Gren, it has Thunderclap on Bolt, Bullet Punch on Scizor, Mach Punch and Vacuum Wave on Ape. Thwacky, I believe, still has Glide.
Mhm.
So I think really this team can clean up, it can revenge really well with that priority where kind of it might be lacking elsewhere. I also think the special breakers and sweepers are amazing. I think the physical side is heavily reliant on Scizor. But I do think the special breaking and sweeping potential of this team, like just Gren cleaning, Bolt getting Calm Minds up, very, very scary. However, I think it's lacking is it really struggles against dark types. Your knockoff switch-ins are Gren, Infernape, and Quillfish Asui, none of which really want to come in on any attacks.
Especially on a knockoff, like they all want.
Yeah. And this is another team that doesn't have a rock resist. As you can see by the typing chart, it has Glastrier, which is weak to rock, and not a single other Pokemon that interacts with rock, which makes this team very Edgequake weak. And I'm just not a fan of Glastrier here. I don't feel like it fits the mold of this team. I don't think it does a whole lot. But those are kind of just my thoughts.
I could have argued if he slapped Terra on it instead of Greninja, then
Mhm.
would have been a lot better. But he chose not to. And
Yeah, I'm not sure what the point value was for that, but Terra Greninja might force more prep than a Glastrier does. So, because you can often predict Glastrier just not to come one week, whereas Greninja's probably usually coming, so it might be a better use of Terra, but in the end, you're probably clicking it on Bolt 90% of the time.
yeah.
I'm excited to be proved wrong and see some really cool Glastrier sets, but
Yeah,
until then,
Glastrier
I'm not a
can
fan of it.
You do have a decent hazard game too.
Yeah,
it's worth pointing out. You got a lot of setters. You got, I think the removers are a little unreliable. Scizor and Tentacruel.
Tenna's pretty reliable.
Yeah, it's okay. Just doesn't feel like it'll come every week. Especially you're gonna have two water types, which yeah, you got so many mons.
On this team pivots except for bottom two.
Yeah, that is very nice.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So
momentum.
Anyways, I think our next team, we got Ben with the Terra Mew, Sneasler, Terra Archaludon, Zapdos, Pelipper, Petront, Crocodile, P2, Crocalor, and Arboliva. First thing that popped out for me was the lack of Swift Swimmer on a Pelipper team, but you still have Archaludon, I guess. I just would prefer... I feel like if you swap Petront for, like, Basky Legion or something, then it would have been pretty cool.
I do
especially on a
think
team that's kind of slow.
Yeah, I do agree that like a Swift Swim user would be nice. However, I do think the balance of this team is good. I think it could be more assigned to like a rain balance. But I think the only problem with that is your lack of removal really hinders Zapdos from going offensive and Pelipper from running Damp Rock. And bringing Pelipper every week honestly hurts this team more than it helps it, I think.
For sure. Yeah, and Pelipper doesn't even have like defog anymore. This team literally has no removal.
Yeah.
I think it's the only team.
It's tough. It's like a rain team that doesn't want to be a rain team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you didn't get the Swift Swimmer, and I think you could probably draw Petron or something at the bottom, even if it's just like a low tier Swift Swimmer. I don't know what's left on the board.
Golduck, I think, is there.
I think Basket Legion's there too. Basket Legion over Petron.
Yeah, the thing is, if you drop Petron, you still have a poison type in Scizor, so it's not too bad. Yeah, maybe you can go to Petron, although I do think Petron's just really good. I've been surprised that maybe people disagree, but I've seen that mod do very well. Another thing is like good. Terra Mew and the Terra Mew and Archaludon, both very threatening. You do invest quite a bit of points into that on the team, and I wonder, are you ever going to feel like you wish you could Terra both, but since you can only Terra one, the other one's not that good? Mew's obviously got a lot of move cuts this gen and is a lot weaker than it used to be. So yeah, I think the biggest thing though is just the lack of removal and having two flying types that both sometimes like items that aren't boots, at least in the case of Pelipper.
Yeah.
And with, you got a lot of pivoting between, Porygon 2, or actually, that doesn't get teleported anymore, never mind. Well, Crocolar wants to run Eviolite, and it's going to take rocks damage, and Mew likes to pivot, but it also really likes leftovers, so it can be a little tough. Sneasler also has terrain with Arboliva, but it's like conditional terrain, it's not the best, so
Yeah, it's
you can sweep with that, but it's not a guarantee,
Yeah, I know they wanted Thwacky.
Yeah, Thwacky did get sniped, and Rillaboom went very early, so...
I think this team could also struggle with immediate pressure. I think unless you have something like Spec Zapdos or Choice Band Sneasler, which I mean, in the case of Spec Zapdos, we talked about rocks. It can struggle a little to have like an immediate presence and an immediate threat level.
Yeah, like there's literally no
Yeah.
Draco Meteor switching. Porygon 2
Oh, yeah.
is like the best you have. Porygon
No fairy type. We did not bring up the no fairy type this time.
I think the first 4 teams did not have a fairy type at all. And that's kind of how they end up on the bottom.
CB Hulk did.
CB Hulk.
The first team did, and then the next 3 did not. But this is actually a team that the Terra captains don't even really always want to be fairy. I think Mew can run fairy pretty well, but Archaludon, I think I've never used it.
I don't know what Archaludon does.
I know it's just really good with rain. I don't know what Terra it likes to go, but
probably
no dragon resist is just very, very abusable. And even if you are going to Terra Fairy, like you still have to switch in and click Terra. If you haven't gotten your Terra off yet, you don't have the switch in. So big Draco Meteors, like like a Latios or something, can just click it for free every time on this team. And you really only have Sneasler to outspeed stuff. So a couple things that could change, and I think this team has a lot of potential to shoot up in the rankings if you just make like 1 or 2 changes. But as it stands, we got it down here at, I think, 13th.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at number 12, we got Crocodile, or Crocodiile, I don't know how you would say it. But anyways, he's got Terra Ogerpon, Heatran, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Tinglu, Weezing, Galar, Cyclizar, Raikou, Tornadus, Farigiraf, and Cleaver. So he's not missing, like, any typings that are pretty crucial like the last 4 teams, but he is kind of lacking power on like the special side. Like pretty much all he has is Heatran, and like Raikou isn't really a real like special breaker type thing, and Torn is kind of unreliable.
Yeah, I think this team sets hazards really well, which can help. I mean, Tinglu's right there, but I will agree the special side is a bit underwhelming, and I think defensively it relies on Weezing to deal with all the fighting types. So if you're not bringing Farigiraf support with Wish regularly, this team is very chippable. I do think Ogre can just win some games, and so can Urshi, though. So I think this team...
Yeah, what does Ogerpon get from Terra? Is it plus speed?
Plus speed, yes.
Speed
yeah, so you get...
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, then.
And you have an item, so it can do a lot.
Yeah, I do like regular Ogerpon like a lot more than the other ones, to be honest.
Yeah.
They also like this team has 3 removal options. I mean, Cleavor is not really a removal option, but you got Defog on Weezing and Rapid Spin on Cyclizar. So a nice, pretty good setter. You got a bunch of different setters. So I like that, and I think it fell short for me, not for any like glaring weaknesses aside from a bit of a fighting and an ice weakness, but just the power of this team compared to some of the ones. Yeah, it's not that it's bad. Urshifu does a lot of damage, but other than Urshifu, like Ogerpon is decent damage after Terra, and Raikou's like okay. Heatran is okay, being slow. But some of the guys on top have like I said earlier, they have so many threats that it kind of just overshadows this team. Much less that this team is just like bad on its own. And I think it still is a good team.
Yeah. Anything else you guys?
Also, the Farigiraf Wish passing is like really good here with Tinglu and Heatran. That's pretty fun.
And Weezing. I think Weezing really needs it.
Yeah, so the Farigiraf pick is like a really good pick. I don't know how often you can bring it. You're gonna have to cut some really strong Pokemon to bring it.
Honestly, I feel like he can bring it like quite a lot because it feels like he only wants to bring like top 4, maybe 5 every week, and the rest are just kind of like whatever.
Yeah,
You can kind of leave off like Heatran a lot too.
I do think this team can definitely whittle down teams with hazards and like break them wide open with Ogre Pun or Urshi. Like completely clean the game up with maybe like a Bandit Ogre or an SD Ogre, a Sash SD Ogre, and then also Urshi.
Yeah, for sure.
But it definitely has ways to win games. Definitely decent.
Yeah. So I think we can move on to number 11. We got Todd with the very offensive team: Iron Valiant, Chi-Yu, Excalibur, Glamora, Jirachi, Ursaluna, Bramblegast, Tauros, Aqua, and Sandslash. Oh, and it's Terra Chi-Yu and Terra Jirachi too. Very offensive team.
Yeah, I think the breakers, sweepers on both sides are very scary, and the Terra captains are both really strong. I mean, Jirachi either defensively or setups very strong, and Chi-Yu, Terra Chi-Yu allows it to do what it does better. So that one's even scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing with this team was if you look at the type chart on the bottom, it's horrendous. You have so many types that you have more weaknesses than you do resistances. Obviously, being an offensive team, you just sort of don't care as much, and Terra Jirachi can usually fix some of those if you need it to. But, the immediate power of this team, we were talking earlier a lot about, like, can this team immediately threaten you? And the answer is yes, like 4 different ways. Valiant, Chi-Yu, Bax, and Ursaluna can all do just insane damage. The issue is if you're out of position, you're probably just going to have to sack them on, unless it's like literally Jirachi. Or maybe, actually, Tauros can check a few things with Intimidate.
Yeah.
But
and even
yeah,
Bramblegast, even though Bramblegast isn't like a bulky mon, like it can kind of check things just like very randomly.
Yeah, Bramble gets some weird matchups where it's really good, but it can't come super often. And you actually rely on Bramble a little bit with it being actually quite a bit. It's your ground resist. It's your only ground resist, and it's one of 2 things to answer fighting types, and otherwise you're fairly weak to those typings.
It also, excuse me, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's also the only thing that breaks water types. This team, yeah.
I could
think
argue
this
like
the way you're
breaking just clicks overheat, and a lot of water types is
yeah.
That's also true. I think this team could just overwhelm water types, but it's like the only like super effective thing on bulky waters.
I would say it has more of a problem with like offensive waters.
That's so fair.
And yeah, Greninja's looking pretty good here.
Yeah, this team is very offensive. There's no real defense here. It's going to beat you down or get beat down. And that's about
pretty
it.
Much.
Yeah,
yeah, max speed
team,
of 116
it's also kind of slow. Like
you get boost around Valiant.
Chi-Yu, and like maybe if you're like an agility mon, you're gonna go for like the speed boosting Valiant. But like you really don't have to be that fast, so you can kind of run a lot of bulk against it.
You just take whatever mon you have that's faster than Valiant, give it a choice scarf, and you're always faster than everything. And that doesn't feel like too big of an ask for most teams. So still super skilled. It's one of those things where it's if they're in the right position, they're always getting a kill, and if they're in the wrong position, they're always sacking them on. That's kind of going to be the play style for this team.
Yep.
Yeah, which does not give a lot of leeway to the coach, sadly. Who knows? They could just beat it. They could just beat everyone.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Yep. So I think we can move on to I Miss Dad's team. Number 10, we got Terra Annihilate, Iron Hands, Goldango, Samurott Hisui, Terra Monkey Dory, Talonflame, Primarina Snorlax, Torterra Spidops, and Rampardos. This team is really weird to me because he drafted Annihilate and then he picked up another fighting type and then another ghost type, like back to back, and I just think that's a weird decision. And it kind of left his team like really weak to ground. The ground resists just like aren't there exactly. you got Talonflame for Terra.
It's basically Talonflame.
Yeah, I don't know what Monkey Dory does with Terra, but I would have preferred to see like maybe like a Terra Torterra here, or
Yeah.
something like that. But
I think
that's
it
my
goes Terra
personal preference.
fighting.
Does it just to not have to click Focus
Yeah,
Blast?
so it
That's
doesn't have to
fair.
Yeah, but then you have 3 fighting types, so I don't know about that.
Yeah. I think this team, yeah, like you mentioned, pretty ground weak and honestly fairly slow outside of Talonflame, which I mean,
Yeah.
it's not coming every week.
He does kind of have some okay Scarfers though.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
Ape is
Gold
actually a really
Monkey.
underrated Scarfer, and then you got Gold and Samurott, I suppose, and then Grant Pardos maybe. But
Yeah, you do a lot of damage though. That's kind of what this team was going for. It's like everything is a threat, even though like I don't love Monkey Dory. I think we all kind of agree on that. It's still like what is like 130 special attack? Yeah, it's 130 special attack, 106 speed. Like all of these guys can threaten you, and you do have decent bulky mons with Prim and Snorlax. So it's going to be matchup dependent. I think you're going to run into matchups where you don't have the answers, especially to like ground types. But if you do have better type matchups, this might be hard to deal with.
Yeah, I do think this is a very good. I would qualify this as like a bulky offense.
Yeah,
Because it does lack a true defensive mon. I mean, you can put Golden Go in that role. You can put Iron Hands in that role. You can put Talonflame, but like or like Prim, but you don't always want to. And so I think that's probably what I would qualify it as.
yeah,
It does that well. It does that fairly well. It's got a lot of threats that hit hard and can run a lot of bulk most weeks.
yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Do you guys have like any closing statements for this?
Yeah, I would say I kind of just don't like some of these Pokemon, and that made me move it down. I don't have very good reasons for it. I'm just like not an Annihilate guy. I don't generally rate Annihilate that high, and it probably is good, but
I like
you know, there's always a little personal bias.
I feel like I like Annihilate more as like a Scarfer more than like a bulk up rest talk man. But it's cool.
Yeah, especially when you already have Iron Hands as a bulk up guy.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's a good Scarfer on this team, especially when you need some speed, which you do here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we can move on to the next one.
Sure. I won't talk on mine till the end because this one is mine.
Yeah. So now we got Joe's team.
Take it away.
With the Great Tusk, Slowking, Galar, Rillaboom, Alomomola, Registeel, Arcanine, Hisui, Noivern, Darkrai, and Comfey. We got kind of like a... I don't really think it's like a stall team, but it's almost like a stall build. Like everything's pretty freaking fat. I'd argue Comfey is like the least fat mon on this team, which is kind of weird. It's kind of hard to break because G-King and Aloe just kind of like pivot around with each other. Other stuff, speed tiers are a bit weird, but I would say like it's not that bad. There isn't like a whole lot that can abuse that speed, but Comfey isn't really like a real speed tier.
Yeah, so kind of my thoughts on this team is it's obviously a very solid defensive core. Every mon here is fat. And then with Aloe, like wish support, regen, grassy terrain, this team is literally living forever. It's got really good physical breakers. I mean, Hisui and Arcanine's crazy, Rillaboom's crazy, Great Tusk can break, it can sweep. And I think it does that really well. In terms of kind of where I saw a bit lacking, the Terra Captains in this format, they're very solid Terra Captains. Arcanine, Hisui, especially on this team, with we were talking about its ways of hitting flying types being non-existent. Hisui and Arcanine being Terra Captain, super strong here, super good. And Noivern definitely Terra Normal Boom Burst is a threat. It can Terra Fairy and do things with that. It can tear into a bunch of different types. But I think compared to some of the other Terra Captains, they're a bit just okay. Yeah, and it seems a bit passive at times. I do think with stuff like G King, Aloe, Registeel, Humfei, it can be a bit passive, but I think it's a very solid defensive-oriented team.
So what do you think?
Yeah. So I think everything you said is pretty fair. No one even like acknowledged the existence of Darkrai, which is honestly corrupt. But yeah, it's pretty much the goal was just the dual regen core of Slowking and Alomomola. Slowking's, I would say, not very passive defensive Pokemon with like Future Sight hitting extremely hard. Like it has 110 special attack, and nabbing like poisons off of Sludge Bomb. I think it can make quite a bit of progress. Aloe is obviously much more passive and much more focused on just healing the rest of the team.
Yeah, as you saw like half an hour ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so and Registeel has some setup potential, though it's not going to come every week. More just meant to abuse the terrain because Registeel with reliable recovery is quite strong. But it does fall short of some other teams. I think Darkrai is really not a good Pokemon in my opinion. It was 17 points, which in my view is a couple points too expensive. I think this Pokemon's really bad in draft, but it fit the team very well. I needed some more speed. I needed some more special offense, and if they don't have the best fairy types, Darkrai can come in some weeks and just hit really hard with like a Specs Dark Pulse or something like that. So yeah, I think you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head with this one. It's a little bit of a new thing for me. I've never really drafted this much bulk, so we'll see how it works.
I do think Darkrai. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I think Darkrai could be good.
It can be. You still have to respect like Hypnosis if he's ballsy enough to land Hypnosis.
I also think the speed stat on this team lets it really come in as a cleaner with its coverage. I mean, we were talking about fairies. It cleans up with Sludge Bomb. We were talking about flying, so this team kind of struggles. It's coming in and clicking Thunderbolt. It's coming in and setting up plots. It's Specs. It's Expert Bolt. You know, like it's Thunder. Does it get Ice Beam? I can't remember.
It gets Ice Beam. Yeah. It gets Ice Beam.
Yeah, so you have ways to remove those. You have the coverage that you kind of need on this team to kind of clean up, and I do think that speed stat and that special attack stat really help.
It can work.
And you have pivots to get in, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate analysis. Yeah, I rely quite a bit on Arcanine. I'll admit that, but I think it's going to be pretty good. Especially, I do want to go for some Terra Normal E-Speed stuff, but we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I was thinking that you would probably want to Terra Normal E-Speed like quite a bit, because you don't really want to rely on Darkrai too much as like your only Ghost Resist maybe, and your team like you have Glow King is special, but it's not gonna really take Shadow Balls like too well. So I'd argue like Registeel's like your Shadow Ball taker otherwise. But yeah, I mean defensive team, it's probably not gonna die.
Not looking forward to playing this week 1.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and this is a team that will be playing it on week 1. Next up we got Wheat's team. With the Dialga Origin, which was allowed for some reason. Terra Iron Boulder, Clefable, Mandibuzz, Sandy Shocks, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, Slitherwing, Inteleon, and Orthworm.
The team's bad. What can I say?
I think it's okay. This is probably the team that moved up for me the most. Because I think I had this at like 12, and then it ended up moving up to like 8. I think it's at, so... It's not too bad, and I think it's the only team I see on the type chart that doesn't have like an explicit weakness.
I think that's fake though, because like Inteleon's not a real fire resist or a real water resist, but it looks pretty on the type chart.
Right. I mean, you were thinking about picking up a specific amount. I think that helps you a lot more.
I agree. I do think I need some transactions, and this team could be very good. But
yeah, this team's mostly just this high because of Dialga. And like sure,
and the Terra
Dialga
Iron
is
Boulder.
yeah, and Terra Iron Boulder, but like sure, a Dialga isn't really holding an item. It's kind of like isn't Adrenaline, not Adrenaline Orb, Adamant Orb?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like holding a Soul Dew, isn't it?
Yeah, it
it's
gives
20%
you
to stab.
to steal
Yeah.
and dragon, which can be really strong.
So it's not like it's not like holding a Mega Stone or anything. Like it actually does something, and it gets Scale Shot to boost its speed.
Mhm.
Plus one's pretty fast. Like with those
I mean,
sets,
yeah.
like you're not dying.
Dialga should not have been allowed. It's clearly the best thing on the team. That's not in the format, and the fact that it's item locked is like not too bad because the item's actually good and you can't be knocked off. So it's like really good. It's just
Yeah.
that your type coverage is like a little imperfect. You definitely struggle with waters,
Mhm.
a little bit with fire, a little bit with ground. Ogre helps a little bit with that, but Ogre is also item locked, so you can be outscarfed by some of those guys sometimes, or something of that nature. So having two item locked mons is like it's not the worst thing because they're both really good, but it is a little bit abusable in prep sometimes because you know they're never going to be choice scarf or choice band or whatever.
Also leads into me being a little rocks weak. Like Ogre doesn't want to
Yeah.
take rocks, and I don't really have good removal with Mandy being my removal. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd argue Mandy's really good. It's just
Yeah.
kind of exploitable.
Yeah, it has a lot of roles it wants to fill here. It wants to be my removal. It wants to take a lot of the defensive workload, like switching in on probably like most fighting in dark types, even though Clef can. Yeah, I think that can
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
can
I
be
think
exploited.
Mandy's role is a little forced into being the primary or actually only defogger, meaning like offensive clef is almost never an option for you, and then Orthworm may end up coming a little more than you'd like it to. Though Orthworm, I remember being like 4 points or so, it was something crazy low.
It's 5 points, and I love
Yeah,
I mean, it has no
it's
shed tail,
low.
but it's still a really strong
Yeah,
mon without shed tail.
it's immune to ground. It's just like it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So your defensive like trio, I guess, of like Clef, Mandy, and Orthworm is like pretty solid. And like you've got like an offensive hazard pivot thing with Sandy Shocks and the Fast Intellion. So you've got a lot of different options here to come each week. I think the one that stands out is just like not being needed is the Slither Wing. I don't really know what it does. Maybe you have an explanation for it.
I think mostly it's here as like a ground resist. I think I like. First of all, my first thought was in this like kind of broken format. I like having first impression. Something like an Ogre Teal mask taking first impression is not fun. Or I can bulk up if it protects. And then also the defensive sets with Morning Sun and Will O Wisp and U-turn. I liked it as like a ground resist pivot. It was between like that or Heracross, and I think I liked it more for the
I like
first
Fervor a
impression.
lot. I think first impression, you're right that you kind of need good priority in this format, and like your other mons, I don't think have priority except Inteleon gets like some weird.
It gets
stuff
Vacuum
with
Wave,
it.
Aqua Jet, and Ice Shard.
Oh, it gets Vacuum
Yeah.
Wave now. That's cool.
Yes. Ogerpon also. Oh no, wait, that might be Natex. I could be wrong. Ogerpon gets Quick Attack. But like besides that, strong priority is kind of lacking. I don't have Sucker Punch. I don't have anything crazy.
Yeah.
So I do think first impression, especially like bug typing, hitting some of those fast psychics or the fast grasses could be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we
Slithering
spent way too long.
Yeah. Next up, we got another Ogrepon team with Ivy's Ogrepon Wellspring, Iron Treads, Rotom Heat, Como-O, Terra Sylveon, Lycanroc Dusk, Moltres Galar, Cresselia Mousehold, and Palisand. I'm actually going to start off first because I kind of noticed this team had like some similar issues to, like Croc's team, where it doesn't have like a lot of breaking potential on the physical side, but it also kind of lacks on the physical side too. But Ogrepon's really good. Like Ogrepon will always be a good breaker because of Terra. But you also have like Sylveon's really good at like running choice specs if you want it to, and Komao sets up on both sides pretty easily. But it's just very setup reliant. And then you have like Rock Dusik, I guess.
Rock is your one like big breaker. I'd actually say it's like the one guy who doesn't have to set up, besides maybe like Ogrepod.
Yeah, I definitely don't think Terra Ogrepon needs to set up. But yeah, Lycanroc for sure doesn't either. I think water types with ice coverage really mess this team up. I think Ogrepon is like their only way to deal. And if the Mon has freeze dry instead of ice beam, this team really struggles.
Yeah, this team is 6-0 by Lapras.
Yeah. Iron
6-0
bundle.
Bundle.
Don't worry, they're gonna
Hydro.
miss every Hydro Pump.
Exactly. Just don't click Hydro Pump. That's my philosophy for bundle. Just flip turnout instead. You'll be fine.
I can agree with
Watch
that.
out for choice band bundle.
This is also a really slow team, where you have another Mon with 110 speed that can't run Scarf. But like Mousehold and Treads kind of like speed boost, and Treads like usually runs like booster speed. But I also felt like Treads is like you're over relying on Treads, because it's also
Treads is your only removal. But its removal also boosts speed, so
that's fair.
it just doesn't hit that hard. It's 112 attack, so it's like it's not really like a setup speed sweeper guy. It's usually gonna rapid spin and then like do like 50% maybe, but if they have a resist, it's gonna do like 30%. I think it struggles to claim KOs against even some mons that are weak to it, especially if you're clicking Ironhead, because that's a really low base power move. But I still like the treads. I mean, it's necessary here because you need the removal for your Ogrepon. And you know you can set up hazards pretty well, just not the best at removing them. And like, yeah, I think Como is very scary on this team though. That's one guy here I really enjoy using myself.
I was surprised he didn't put the Terra on it.
It was a really expensive Terra. It was like 23 points or something.
Oh, was it?
The Ogrepon water was already 25 points for Terra. So I think Sylveon was maybe only like Sylveon was a pretty cheap Terra, so I think it was just like an extra guy to have. But yeah, it's pretty solid overall. The Moltres is also a sweeper, and you've got decent bulk with like Iron Treads, Rotom Heat, Sylveon, Cresselia, like pretty good options all around. It's pretty versatile. It's just a little bit of lack of braking. It's really the only complaint, and a little bit of lack of speed. You even have like a Celerock like in Dusk, so that can make up for it too.
I think we can move on to the next team.
Yeah,
I agree.
Next up, we got Isaac with the Palafin, Kyurem, Terra, Zarude, and Iron Crown. Moltres, Excadrill, Hatterene, Overquill, Cincino, and Sableye. Another kind of slowish team with Rodent as the fastest Mon. But we put this team pretty high. I think Palafin's kind of overrated in my opinion, but it's supported really well with like Freeze Dry Kyurem and Zarude being able to like break through the bulky waters. Even Crown with Terra can like bait in a water and kind of just like destroy it, leaving it for Palafin later. And in general, like this team is really good at like, baiting in waters for Palafin. And then Palafin can just like set up sweep.
Yeah, I really like both the Terra captains in this. I think they're like some solid value for like really strong Terra captains. I think the breakers and at least the physical sweepers on this team are really strong. And this is bulky offense. I love bulky offense. I think my biggest props I have to give though is drafting 3 dark types and not being fairy weak. Don't know how you did it. But hats off to you.
He also drafted 3 dark types and 2 psychic types, and only has. Oh, he doesn't have a single psychic weakness. Or I'm sorry, he doesn't have. He only has 1 bug weakness. I'm sorry.
Yeah, actually crazy. I think kind of my biggest complaint about this team is they would kind of like a Claire. for being bulky offense, I'd like a way to get rid of some of those annoying statuses. I know Zerd has jungle healing, I believe still, but it's another way to remove some of those the statuses or wish
Clerics don't really
pass.
exist in Paldex, though.
I know. I know clerics don't really exist here,
It's
but
like
I think
Chimecho.
yeah, I think bulky offense likes a cleric or at least a little wish support. I think the only like defensive mod being Maltrace is fine because everything else can run bulk, but or like some things can run like you can run super AV Iron Crown 1 week, so everything can fill a defensive role. I just think it's more leaning towards a bulky offense, which I'm a fan of. So I think I was the highest on this team, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah. I did like this team. One of my gripes with it, though, was, like, I know he got sniped from the Quillfish Usui, but I would have rather seen that than Overquill, just because it's a bit bulkier, and, like, Overquill is kind of wasted potential without being on, like, Rain, I think. But you can run, like, manual Rain, I think, with this team, actually. But I don't know, that's just my...
If you get manual rain and then you get the Palafin in, you're just winning.
You could do that too, for sure. Like, I guess you can use Sableye as like a rain.
Does that get rain dance?
I believe it does.
Probably.
Probably does.
Let's see.
Like everything learns rain dance.
Yeah, it gets rain dance.
Oh, everything gets rain dance. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Palafin and Overkill can just self set.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Overkill
that as well.
can. It's just like usually once they're on like SD liquidation, crunch, gunk shot, or whatever. But
yeah,
it doesn't need swords dance, I guess. But
I think intimidate can also be good for this team because it's a little underwhelming on the bulky side. I think defensive Overquill and setting up the hazards could be really solid for this team.
Yeah.
Solid. I just really like how everything, like literally every mon on this team besides Sableye is a threat offensively. Like every single one of them can threaten to KO you at any time. Even a defensive Moltres is still hitting hard with Flamethrower and like maybe you're running Hurricane or everything else here is not even really defensive, but you can run them all bulky, and I think you can do some tricky things with Terra on Iron Crown and like force some 50-50s on like the type chart. And Terra Zarude with Choice Scarf just sounds like it's going to do so much damage. If you go either Terra, Dark, or Grass and just click your stab move, it's going to be really hard to switch into. So I see threats across the board, and that makes me really like this team, and that, something that makes it stand out over a lot of the other ones that have not quite as many threats. So we're going to see pretty soon here, basically every team has a lot of threats.
Yeah.
You guys want to move on?
Yeah, I think we're good to get on to the last person with us today.
Yeah. We're on to my team. I'll let you guys babble on about this one.
Sure. So the first thing to note that I saw when I looked at this is like you have 11 mons, and all 11 are at least good enough to come like probably 2 times a season. The one, I don't know, maybe Golurk Stores, I don't know, whatever. They're all like stuff that the opponent has to prep for. It's not like stuff that you can just ignore. And you are simultaneously a very bulky offense team, but you also have good speed. Like you have Torn and Superior at the top, and like first impression, or does low kicks get first impression, or maybe it's just Sucker Punch?
It gets both.
It gets both.
It's both. You got the priority there. You got the Shell Smash on Blastoise, the agility on Metagross, Rapid Spin Terapagos. So like, yeah, you got a lot of immediate speed. You got setup speed. You got priority. At the same time, like everything here is bulky. Terapagos, Metagross, Diancie with Terra is super hard to break. And Superior is, I think, one of the best Terramons on the board. It was only like 17 points, which I thought was a little low. I maybe would have bumped it up 1 or 2 if I was making the tiers, but this thing is really scary, especially combined with a defensive Terra and Diancie. It's going to be hard. If they're both on your team 1 week, your opponent sees both of them there, they're not going to know like which one's going to Terra, and you can have some mind games with that. I think you can really spiral out of control, like with 6 different Pokemon here once they get set up. It's going to be really hard to deal with. So yeah, I just really like every aspect of this team.
Yeah, for sure. I was kind of underrating myself a bit at first. I think I had my team at like number 7. But then you guys kind of convinced me, like, yeah, this is one of the only teams that, like, with 11 Mons, like, you have to prep for all of them. Whereas a lot of other teams, you can kind of just, like, ignore the low tiers. And, like, you'll have prep for them. But, like, my bottom Mons, Typhlosion, Hisui, and, like, if you don't have the switch into Scarf Eruption, like, you're going to get swept by Eruption, for example. Yeah, and, I would say, like, this is probably the team that has, like, the least... I don't really know, like, how to say it, but it doesn't have, like, immediate strength, like, as good as, like, other teams. Like, Metagross is really strong.
Yeah.
Galgi is really strong. I guess you could argue, like, Lokix and Palma are, like, kind of strong, but I'm pretty reliant on, like, Metagross and then, like, a lot of my low tiers every week, because I only have, like, 4 top-end Mons. And then the rest are, like, points.
That's something I kind of mentioned too, or at least in my notes, was there is kind of almost a lack of breakers here. There's not a whole lot. I mean, there's both sides get pretty solid special, or both sides get pretty solid sweepers, but the breakers are kind of just Lokix, Typhlosion, Dragalge, and Metagross, which 2 for each side, and them kind of not being like the strongest known offensive mons, like, are slower or not like crazy threats. It might struggle with that. I think Terra Serp just wins games. And I think Terra Dancy is really good value in this like format.
Yeah,
and I think you also, yeah, I think you have the best spinners. I think Blastoise Terapagos for removal is probably the best we've seen in the entire division, and the best that there is. And like you had mentioned, any mon can come. You have to prep for all 11, and I don't think sometimes some teams cannot prep for all 11. So there could be a week where you're really not prepping for that low kicks, or you're really scared of the low kicks and you over prep, and then, oh no, what's your Dragalge switch in? You don't have one. I do think this team definitely is threatening, and we're getting into some of the real top tier teams, for at least for the division.
Yeah, so the
flip
5.
side. Oh, the flip side of having 11 mons that are all good is, like, you might have weeks where you wish you could bring like 9 of them and you can only bring 6. And I don't know how this team looks when you cut it down to 6 mons. Obviously, like, you look at the type chart and it's pretty good. You got a lot of different hazards and pivots and all that stuff, but when you have to axe 5 mons off this team, is it still good? I'd say yes, but it's going to be up to the builder to figure that out every week, and it might pose not obviously it's a harder team to build with, but if your opponent happens,
for sure,
yeah, if their team's super weak to Palmot and you don't bring Palmot because you thought 6 or 7 other guys were better than Palmot, then yeah, that's some wasted potential. So it's gonna be interesting to see, because it's really tough to build with 11 real Pokemon.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our number 5 team. Next up, we got
number 4.
Yep, we got Jelly Hoops with Dragapult, Namorous, Terra Iron Moth, Fortress, Swampert, Necrozma, Keldeo, Terra, Bronzong, Zangoose, and Masquerain. Really scary offense, like the top 3 is just pretty insane. Although they are kind of like leaning on the special side, but you do have to respect like Dragon Dance on Pult. And even like you kind of have to respect like Superpower and Amorous. And I think Necrozma gets DD still, probably. But
yeah, I think this team's definitely better at special breaking. But sweepers on both sides are very scary. The physical breakers are kind of just Pult. But I mean, the Terra Captains are also fantastic. Iron Moth is really scary, and Keldeo, honestly, it's one of those mons where it's just gonna click its stabs better than it already does. And that's nothing to complain about on this team.
Yeah, you're very specially biased, but all of your special attackers, except for Iron Moth, like, have physical options, and like Pult can obviously go either way, and Amorous has Superpower, and then Keldeo has Secret Sword. So you can't just run like assault vest everything and win because all of them have almost all of them have ways to hit you, and then Necrozma can go either way too. So it's a lot of mixed offense that's going to be hard to prep for because you don't know what's coming. And then on the defensive side, like Fortress, Swampert, each only have one weakness and they resist the other one. I really like that, even though Fortress is like the most passive mon in the game. That's fine. Still can. Does it get Volt Switch? Yeah, it does. So you still got like a nice pivoting core there. It's not the best defensive core, but it
and
gets
you're not
hazards.
even relying on Fortress either as like your steel type to resist things. Like you can leave Fortress and just like click a bunch of hazards and then like explode if you want to, and then like use Bronzong later on if you could slot both, I suppose. So I kind of like the double steal there.
Yeah, I don't know how often you're gonna want to do that, but it is at least an option having two different steals.
The biggest struggles I've seen are ghost types. Zangoose is not a real resist. So this team really struggles with like a Spectrier, which we have not seen on the tier list yet, but it's coming. And it also really kind of relies on Iron Moth, Tearing Grass, or Energy Ball to break waters is another thing I know. Or like Specs Pult Thunderbolt. Like an AV Aloe just kind of sits on this team. Which I don't know if I'd ever thought about saying that, but
I don't know. I think a grass an energy ball from Iron Moth is still doing a lot to an AV Aloe, but yeah, there still are issues with waters for sure. And I think the bigger weakness is the ghost. It was a little weird to grab the Fortress and a Necrozma and then get another Steel Psychic. The Bronzong was super cheap. It was only 7 points for Bronzong, so like that was an obvious steal off the draft board in my opinion. So I don't fault you for going for it, but there are going to be weeks like I don't think you're going to bring all three of those on the same team very often. So I don't know. It hinders you a little bit. But yeah, I almost went for Bronzong, but I already had a Psychic type on my team, so I didn't want to double up. But this coach did not care, and honestly, I think the team's better for it. It's just that Ghost weakness. That's like the only thing.
He also has no Dark type, which is kind of concerning. But Pult will Pult can break through like a lot of the Psychic types anyways, like the Stored Power, Cosmic Power mons. I don't even know how many there even are, but like you still have to do that.
Yeah, you can always Panic Terra as well, like Terra Dark or Terra Normal if the matchup's really bad. Like Spectre, I would almost kind of want a Terra Normal on something or Terra Dark. So Zangoose is not my only switch in to Scarf Spectre, but that's just me.
Yeah. But anyways, that's our number 4. Number 3, and these last 3 are pretty interchangeable, but we got Charizard at number 3. He definitely has, I think, the best offense. It's just the defense is a little bit weak. So you got Chien-Pao, Deoxys Speed, Garchomp. Bundy T is like your offensive mons, and Tikitan, Serena, Quillfish, Komala is like your defense. Then you got like Terraceralege, can do whatever. But yeah, as you can see, it's like top 4 plus Seru are just like super offensive, and you are pretty reliant on your low tiers for defense. But even your offensive mons like take a hit.
You got Garchomp also
good type synergy that kind of helps. Like Garchomp and Tinkaton have pretty good type synergy, and also like I think that's pretty helpful.
Yeah, you've also got insane speed, like Chien-Pao and Deoxys, and then you still have like Garchomp and Thundurus as like somewhat fast guys. Who you got Scale Shot on Chomp, and you got like Shadow Sneak, Cerulege. So there's a lot of ways to be fast. It's the fastest average speed, I think we were saying earlier.
Yep.
Obviously, Deoxys being 180 kind of bumps up that average quite a bit. But
I knew I should have drafted Regieleki.
That Regieleki was like 6 points too. It was like pretty.
I almost drafted it. I think honestly, this team probably just wants better removal. Like Serena's really solid, but like with the rock weakness of Chien-Pao, Thundy, and Cerulege is some of like your craziest sweepers. I do think it can be a little annoying at times. to get those rocks off, or so that you don't have to run boots on all three, or you are not taking 25% on each switch in?
Yeah. We had a team earlier, and I can't remember which coach I said this for, that I was like, you're either gonna take a kill or you're gonna have to sack them on. And this team almost has that problem, except your offensive mons are more bulky. So I think it does that kind of playstyle, but better, to where you're not sacking as often as you think. And like, you can run bulky chomp. I think Cerulege has a pretty good special defense.
Cerulege is pretty bulky.
So yeah, it's 100 special defense, 75 HP is like pretty good. And your defensive core, it's not great. Like, objectively, Tinkaton, Serena, Quillfish, Komala are like, they're really not that good. Especially like Komala's not that bulky on the physical side. But they're still decent, and they still all do something. Mostly on the hazard side, they're kind of all hazard related mons. But it's a very top heavy team, but the offense is so potent, especially with Chen-Pao, which is, I would say, the second strongest mon in the format besides the Dialga. It really pushes you over the top.
Yeah, I think this team also has the potential to run some defensive sets. We've talked a lot about defensive Chomp, but also the fully defensive Deoxys is really crazy. For like maybe the Chi-Yu week, they run Terra Fairy Cerulege with Flash Fire just to kind of completely neutralize it and click close combat on it or something different. And then I talked about the synergy type-wise between like Garchomp, Tinkaton. This team does have bulky options. It's not completely like, just relying on Serena, Quillfish, Komala, Tinkaton. It definitely has options where it can run bulkier.
Yeah.
It's mostly just going to overwhelm you with its crazy offense because that's what it is.
Yeah, just really scary in the team builder when you see Chen-Pao, Deoxys Speed, Garchomp, Terra Thundurus as the first four, and you have to figure out a way to answer all of them. Then you realize there's a Cerulege at the end too that you didn't prep for because you're like me and you just prep from top to bottom.
That's why I change the order of the mons when I prep.
Yeah, I am kind of known for sometimes just ignoring like the last three mons because I'm prepping 10 minutes before the game.
I'm looking at my draft order right now. I'm hoping Ogerpon is far enough down for Jordan not to realize it exists.
What? You have an Ogerpon on your team?
Exactly.
Anyways.
Yeah, this seems really scary. We can move on.
We got Charles at number 2. I was heavily debating on having this at number 1 because I think a lot of the flaws are like a little less flawed than the number 1, but we put this at number 2 anyway. We got Terra King Gambit, which is, I think, people are arguing it's like the best mon in the format, maybe. Iron Bundle, Latios, Shifu, Single Strike, Pheasantipity, Donphan, Sinistra Terra, Skarmory, and Persian. Can't forget Persian. But, yeah, anyways, my first thoughts looking at the team was he basically only has 8 mons, and like Persian is also there.
It's not coming. Even to the Ghost Weeks, it won't come. It won't. Even to the weeks of playing a strong.
You got 2 dark types.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean, obviously, you just mentioned King Gambit is the best Terramon in the game. But if something goes wrong with your King Gambit, Terra Sinistra is actually really good value. It's really solid. I do think like the top 4 mons are probably the scariest, like top tier draft. Like this is so top heavy, and so like I don't know if a single one of these top 4 is under 17 points. And I also don't know if they have a single switch in either. And the typing synergies, I think Pheasantipity, Sinistra, Donphan, even like Lottie can all like take some of the issues and not like and shake them off. Yeah, I just the breakers and the sweepers, you can't like avoid them.
Yeah, it's sort of a similar deal to the Charizard team we just saw, where you have like 4 really, really strong offensive mods, and then like your defense is a little sus, but I would say on this team the defense is a bit better. With like Pheasantipity having really good special defense, Skarmory and Donphan really good defense, and then like even your offensive mods. Obviously King Gambit has like pretty good defensive stats. Bundle has good defense, Latios has good special defense, and like Urshifu has good defense. So they're only bulky on like one side of the offensive spectrum, but you can still sometimes make that work. So again, it's not as bad as just like having to sack them on every time something better comes in. You also have like double sucker punch with like Urshifu and King Gambit, so that can be annoying to play around. And like Latios is like almost unwallable unless you're a dark type, because Luster Purge will just lower your special defense and then you will die to Draco Meteor or whatever super effective hit it has for you. So yeah, when I was writing for this team in my notes, I just said like this is an unguardable team. You're not going to be able to answer all of its threats.
And even on like the defensive side, I've seen Sinistra just like wall entire teams. Like that mon is super annoying. I don't even really know how,
Yeah,
because like stats aren't even like that amazing. It just kind of sits there.
it's so good against physical attackers because it has Strength Sap and Matcha Gotcha.
Yeah,
Um,
that burn is so annoying. That
so yeah, you're
burn
gonna burn
happens
them.
all the time.
You're gonna lower their attack. It's not good against special attackers, but its base Fizdef is 106, which is pretty good. So
Yeah,
it's I've seen it work so many times. I've watched so many Sinistra replays, and I'm like, I gotta use that thing. But when you have Terra King Gambit, I don't know how often you're using this Sinistra, but you might.
yeah. This team is just really strong.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's kind of all. I don't have anything else to say if you guys want to move on.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
go to the top team.
we can go on to Mr.
Number
Raiden.
one. Number one, we got Raiden's team with the Spectre, Quaquaval, Ursaluna Blood Moon, Roaring Moon, Screamtail, Empoleon, Big Chestnut, Scyther, and Terra Salazzle. The only issue I think I had with this team initially was Chestnut is like the only thing that's going through like bulky waters initially. But I also kind of realized like Terra Electric Quaquaval is like its best like Terra type, like it prefers Terra Electric. So I didn't even really like mark any points for that. Even like Terra Salazzle can kind of annoy the crap out of bulky waters because like Salazzle's pretty hard to switch in on, and if it just wants to click subtoxic, it will just click subtoxic, and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that, and I was like, the way you beat bulky waters is just attack them with any of your top four mons because they're all neutral at least,
Exactly.
and their offenses are so high. Like Ursaluna Blood Moon is like, who cares if they have high special defense? They're still taking at least 50%. Spectre gets a boost. Spectre gets a Grimnade boost. It's killing everything already. So, you have the two best like snowball sweepers in the game with Spectre and Quaquaval. And then Ursaluna does insane damage on its own, and like Roaring Moon, after getting buffed in DLC, is like no longer Roaring Mid, and actually can do real damage with knockoff and U-turn and stuff. So, really tough to crack. And then unlike the other teams, and I think this is what put it on top for me. The other teams we've seen at the top is like your defense is actually really good with Screamtail and Empoleon and like somewhat Chestnut. Screamtail, you can heal up the rest of your team with Wish. You can like Thunderwave stuff down, so you're always the fastest thing. And obviously Empoleon's just really bulky and has Flip Turn, and I think has Roost. So not a lot of weaknesses here. I guess you're a little flying weak too. Just offensively, your only flying resist is Empoleon, and you're a little bit ice weak, but yeah, I don't know what Salazzle is gonna Terra into. I've never seen that used with Terra, but Quaquaval's obviously your primary guy.
He probably is not going to use Terra Salazzle fight, I guess, but
Yeah,
it's still pretty good. I probably would have went with like Terra Chestnut, but
I think I agree. With the defensive core of Screamtail and Empoleon, you'd like to add a third mon in there that has a better typing. Like Chestnut would be able to do with like if it could just go, I don't know, whatever, Terra Water or something.
I don't know. Raiden has always been the king of low tiers, and I'm excited to see him cook with Terra Slazzle, and that's
I'm
all I
excited
have
to
to
see him
say.
cook with like Scyther too.
Yeah, Scyther is
I've
still like
never seen someone
threatening.
draft Scyther.
but it's like
It has
pretty good.
the same
It has good
BST.
stats.
It has the same BST as Scissor.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
got
that might be.
stab dual wing beat with technician,
Yeah.
so it can do some stuff.
Yeah, the Screamtail and Poleon core really just brings this team all together. It lets the Blood Moon just sit forever, like something
Yep.
like an AV Blood Moon or like a tankier Blood Moon. Like you're running like max defense, like max HP, and you're just calm minding for days, and killing things. Yeah, the reliable recovery on Quackable, Ursaluna, Roaring Moon, Screamtail, and Empoleon, as well as Chestnut. Like this team has both the offensive and defensive capabilities to kind of exist in this, at least in this division for sure.
Yeah, and even like sub Spectura with Draining Kiss can heal back some damage if they have like a weak Pokemon to it. So it's kind of just the best of everything. Like all the complaints we have about other teams, like this really doesn't have any of those complaints.
Exactly. And that is why it's number one. But honestly, I could argue like a lot of these teams are like super close.
Yeah, it's definitely
Yeah,
not like a far and away number one.
Yeah, I don't think any of these positions are too far off from each other, at least within like clusters. We talked about this a lot, but there were like definitely tiers to this draft or to people's drafts.
Yeah. Like I think we agreed on like a bottom 4, but even like narrowed that down to like a bottom 2 or whatever, and then like from there there's just a bunch of clumps. And like I think the middle especially, like we initially had some teams like super low and then they went up like 4 spots. And,
Yeah,
like,
I don't know how I did that.
we have no idea. It's the Dialga for you.
I also got you to move me up 2 spots.
Yeah.
But though, yeah, I think pretty much anyone can be at least plus or minus 2 spots. Everyone knows, power rankings are opinions, and people are gonna have different views on which mons are good and stuff. But this is what we ended up on for the list. So,
but we're better than the staff because our PRs are coming out first.
That's true. We can say there's subjectivity to PRs, but it's objectively true that these PRs are better than the ones made by the staff.
Exactly. So, yep. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for joining me. And thanks, Joe,
Yeah, absolutely.
for the idea. Because I wasn't even gonna do this. But I was like, you know what? I don't have anything to do this weekend, so fuck it.
Thanks for having me.
I had fun.
Yeah, always a good time.